Some of the media are seeking forgiveness for their past sins. My question is where was their courage when all of the following illustrations were going on? Listen to this. Since 2019, that's right, 2019, before Biden took office, growing evidence suggests that powerful institutions, including the mainstream media, big tech, and federal agencies, have actively worked to shield Joe Biden from scrutiny, particularly regarding his family's business dealings and his cognitive decline. The most glaring example of this protection was the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story in October 2020. Despite credible reporting from the New York Post, social media giants like Twitter and Facebook aggressively censored the story, falsely labeling it as misinformation. This blatant interference prevented voters from accessing crucial information about Biden's powerful conflicts of interest before the election. Beyond big tech censorship, federal agencies also appeared to run cover for Biden. Reports indicate that the FBI had possession of Hunter Biden's laptop as early as December 2019, but refused to act, even as whistleblowers warned that key information was being ignored or buried. Instead of investigating potential corruption, officials seemed more interested in protecting Biden's political prospects. The mainstream media also played a role in shielding Biden. For years, outlets like CNN, The Washington Post, and the New York Times downplayed or dismissed stories related to Biden's family influence peddling. When the truth became undeniable, these same outlets quietly admitted the authenticity of the laptop story, long after the damage was done. Taken together, these actions paint a troubling picture of entrenched establishment working to isolate or insulate Biden from accountability. Rather than serving the public interest, media elites, big tech, and federal agencies appeared more concerned with ensuring Biden's victory and protecting his presidency, no matter the cost to transparency or democracy. Recent revelations have further illuminated the extent of media suppression, favoring Joe Biden. Former Politico reporters Mark Caputo and Tara Palmieri have disclosed that their editors deliberately quashed stories critical of the Biden family during the 2020 presidential campaign. Caputo recounted that in 2019, he obtained information about a tax lien against Hunter Biden related to his tenure at Burisma Holdings. Despite the story's newsworthiness, Politico editors killed it without explanation. Similarly, Palmieri detailed how her investigative piece on the Secret Service's alleged involvement in retrieving a firearm purchased from a firearm linked to Hunter Biden faced significant delays and editorial resistance. These accounts suggest a concerted effort within Politico to suppress negative coverage of the Bidens, contributing to a broader media landscape that protected Joe Biden from potential scandals during a critical election period. In December 2020, leaked audio recordings from CNN's internal meetings revealed that the network's leadership directed staff to avoid covering the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2020 presidential campaign. These recordings, obtained and released by Project Veritas, featured CNN's then president, Jeff Zucker, advising his team to steer clear of the story, suggesting it was a distraction and lacked credibility. Zucker emphasized the importance of not repeating the unverified allegations, which he believed could unfairly impact the election. Critics argue that this decision exemplifies media bias as examples of that bias, and as CNN chose to sideline a potentially significant news story that could have influenced voters' perceptions of Joe Biden. This incident underscores concerns about major news organizations prioritizing political considerations over journalistic objectivity, thereby contributing to a media environment that some believe protected Biden from negative coverage during a crucial electoral period. In April 2024, Yuri Berliner, a senior business editor at National Public Radio, NPR, publicly criticized his employer's handling of the Hunter Biden laptop story. He revealed that NPR chose to turn a blind eye to the story during the 2020 presidential campaign, despite its newsworthiness. Berliner recounted a meeting where a colleague expressed relief that NPR wasn't covering the laptop story because it could potentially benefit Donald Trump. He noted that NPR's decision to avoid the story was not due to political bias, but because they considered it a distraction and not really a story. This admission has sparked discussion about NPR's editorial decisions and their potential impact on public trust. While NPR's public editor, Kelly McBride, expressed discomfort with tech companies censoring the story, she did not criticize NPR for not covering it. McBride stated that NPR avoided the story due to its tabloid nature, not political bias. These revelations highlight concerns about media organizations' editorial choices and their role in shaping public perception, especially during critical election periods. In December 2024, former CNN editor-at-large Chris Cillizza publicly acknowledged his failure to adequately address President Joe Biden's mental and physical health during his tenure at the network. In a candid YouTube video, Cillizza admitted that he should have pushed harder earlier for more information about Joe Biden's mental and physical well-being and any signs of decline. Cillizza explained that during his time at CNN, he often dismissed concerns about Biden's health due to a lack of direct evidence. He noted that Republicans frequently urged him to investigate Biden's cognitive state, but he felt there was insufficient information to warrant such inquiries. He also mentioned that the White House and Biden's inner circle were adamant that questioning the president's health was age-shaming, which influenced his approach to the topic. This admission has sparked discussions about media responsibility and the role of journalists in scrutinizing the health and fitness of public officials, especially those holding the highest office. Critics argue that such oversight is essential for transparency and accountability, while others suggest that concerns about age and health should be approached with sensitivity to avoid potential ageism. In 2021, ESPN's Sage Steele conducted a pre-taped interview with President Joe Biden, during which she was instructed by network executives to adhere strictly to a prepared script. Steele revealed that she was handed a script ahead of the interview and was directed to follow it without deviation. This directive limited her ability to ask spontaneous or follow-up questions, raising concerns about the authenticity and transparency of the interview, and noting that it restricted her journalistic freedom for a more candid conversation. The revelation of this scripted interview adds to a broader narrative of media organizations potentially limiting critical coverage of President Biden and his administration. It underscores the challenges of maintaining journalistic integrity and independence within large media corporations, especially when covering politically sensitive topics. Cillizza's apology underscores the challenges journalists face in balancing the public's right to know with the ethical considerations of reporting on an individual's health, particularly when that individual is a sitting president. Now, we all knew it, didn't we? So why are they coming forward now? Isn't it clear? Joe Biden and the Biden crime family are history. But we still have some of the negative media that continue with their tired, false narrative. Take a look at the following video that I've put together, and please share your thoughts in the comments.
They wanted you to believe that Joe Biden was at the top of his game. He had the reins of government and he knew exactly what he was doing. All these criticisms from Fox and yours truly and other people questioning Biden's cognitive decline. It was just mean and it was wrong. Remember?
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years.
And this kept going month after month after month until they couldn't lie any longer. Well, we're beating this into the ground. Joining us now is Dan Turrentine, co-host of The Morning Meeting, and former Democrat advisor Mary Catherine Ham, Outkick columnist, Fox News contributor. Dan, they were lying to us, the press. They weren't mistaken. They knew how bad Biden was. They weren't always behind closed doors, of course, but they have sources and contacts. So why were they so brazen in lying?
They wanted to. They wanted to win. They wanted to cling to power. I mean, there's stories that came out of the 2020 campaign. I mean, it feels like it was ages ago, but during COVID, when Biden was primarily home in the basement, and they really safeguarded his nights and weekends because he was getting tired and starting to have kind of moments that staff saw. And, you know, if you think about it, even when he got in the White House and they were securing legislative victories, the story when they would leak it to the New York Times or the Washington Post was always that Biden was behind the scenes busy. But he never used the bully pulpit. He wasn't out giving press conferences and things of that nature. And so, you know, the party decided to roll the dice and rally behind him, even though for his reelection, even though they knew well that he was slowly declining and beginning to really struggle.
Well, Mary Catherine Ham, it doesn't look like in some days it didn't seem slow at all. It seemed like he was totally out of it. So we didn't really have a functioning executive branch or a commander-in-chief or a duly elected president who could make key decisions. We had functionaries making decisions and presenting them to him. Or maybe they didn't even present them to him. I don't know. We'll never know.
Yeah, we don't know. The whole thing is disgraceful. All the people who had access to him, including the press, knew what was going on. This is one of the most consequential cover-ups I've seen in my lifetime in a presidential administration. And a couple things that stuck out to me, and I appreciate the reporting, by the way, from these Wall Street Journal reporters, because they did the first story in August 2024 where it was like, hey, we can all admit that this guy's not really with it. And they got a lot of flack for reporting that at that time. And now here we have, like, you know, we were all right. The American people were all right, by the way. 86% of them in some polls in February of 2024 saying, hey, we can see what's in front of us. He's not well enough to do this for another 4 years. Nonetheless, the people in charge, apparently a co-presidency with like Ron Klain and Jake Sullivan, not okay with me.
So, have some interesting new comments from former ESPN anchor Sage Steele with regard to her previous interview at that network with President Joe Biden. Let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Here as we get set for a wonderful day in sports. Opening day for America's national pastime.
This was about 2 months after he took office. That was an interesting experience in its own right because it was so structured and I was told, you will say every word that we write out. You will not deviate from the script and go to the word. Like every single question was scripted, gone over dozens of times by many executives, editors and executives. Absolutely. I was on script and was told not to deviate. It was very much, this is what you will ask. This is how you will say it. No follow-ups. No follow-ups. Next. I knew that this was a lot bigger than just the wonderful editors that I worked with. This went up to the fourth floor, as we said, that we're all the bosses, the top executives, the decision makers are the president of our company.
So
another great example when Politico did that terrible, ill-fated headline. 51 intelligence agents or former intelligence agents say that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation, or bore the hallmarks of disinformation. Turns out that story was closer to disinformation because the Hunter Biden laptop appeared to be true.
But then Facebook also pulled all stories down about the Hunter Biden laptop, and I think Twitter did at the same time too.
Correct. Yeah. They punished the New York Post. It didn't help. I mean, Politico, my former employer, and I knew at the time, didn't do itself any favors. I was covering Biden at the time, and I remember coming to my editor and saying, hey, we need to write about the Hunter Biden laptop. And I was told this came from on high at Politico. Don't write about the laptop. Don't talk about the laptop. Don't tweet about the laptop. And the only thing Politico wound up writing was that piece that called it disinformation, which charitably could be called misinformation at the least.
Yeah, I mean, I had a hard time. You know, I wrote some pretty serious reporting on Hunter Biden, which actually ended up getting him prosecuted, the story on the gun.
Yeah, and I remember you consulted with me because you did the original report on the gun, and you came to me like, how do I write about this? Like, I'm like, honestly, I don't know.
Because it was hard to get it done.
You figured it out. Yeah.
I spent three months on it. I went to the laptop shop and I did all of the reporting in Delaware, and I did all of that. But yeah, it had to be like it had to be 100% nailed down. I had everything, you know, the police reports, I'm a solid reporter, but I do wonder if it would have been published a little quicker, if it was a different type of story.
Well, since we're spilling tea about our former employer, I still have a copy of the story on my external hard drive. In 2019, a rival presidential Democratic campaign of Joe Biden's gave to me the tax lien, the Oppo research, the tax lien on Hunter Biden for the period of time that he worked at Burisma. And I wrote what would have been a classic story saying, the former vice president's son was slapped with a big tax lien for the period of time that he worked for this controversial Ukrainian oil concern or natural gas concern, which is haunting his father on the campaign trail. That story was killed by the editors, and they gave no explanation for that either.
Interesting.
So that general experience, obviously the public doesn't know about those things, but as a reporter, having witnessed the way in which the two candidates
we just get called like the terrible mainstream media. It's like you don't understand the process there.
We also don't understand the dumb decision of cowardly editors.
The man above us when we're trying to do our jobs. You know what I mean?
As a reporter, I have a confession to make. I should have pushed harder earlier for more information about Joe Biden's mental and physical well-being and any signs of decline. So let me explain. Joe Biden was president from 2020 to 2024. I worked at CNN through 2022. During that time, the early part when I was at CNN, 2020 to 2022, Republicans would regularly ping me and say, why don't you ask more questions to Joe Biden and how he's doing? He's 76, 77, 78-year-old man. And I would sort of brush them off because what I would say is, well, there's no obvious evidence that he's declining. Yeah, he moves a little slower, he talks a little slower, but there's no evidence that he's declining. And the White House and the people around Joe Biden were absolutely adamant that suggesting anything, asking the question about whether he was in some physical, mental, or both decline was offensive. How could you? It's age shaming. And I think that impacted me at some level because while I did ask the question from time to time of, not directly the White House, but aides and people around in that orbit, I didn't really push on it.